Funding for Enterprise Specials is provided by the Charles H. Kelstadt Foundation and by this station and other public television stations.
We've made great strides. We've probably come 10 years in 6 months.
There used to be only one name in the quaint, peaceful world of the airship. But now all of that has changed. A tiny British contender has emerged. But can it really challenge an American giant? In autumn 1984, a small struggling company near Bedford, England seemed doomed. Then Airship Industries was taken over by Australian tycoon Alan Bond.
I perceived it to be potentially a world leader in a new field of technology. I think we've seen the Concorde speeds, but we haven't seen the relative development of the technology of lighter-than-air airships.
His new company is the only one in the world selling airships, but few customers want to buy. Now Bond has backed Airship Industries with $20 million.
New radar on board, eh? Okay.
The company has 8 airships flying and 7 more being built here in Cardington, England, and in Elizabeth City, North Carolina. With its vectored propellers, Porsche engines, and built of the latest carbon fiber composites, the new technology airship carries a price tag of over $4 million. Bond has high hopes for his new company, which has just won its Certificate of Airworthiness, the only one of its type since the 1930s.
I'm looking forward to seeing this arrive in Australia. It's going to be quite a sensation. And we'll have that there by around November, December.
Yeah. Oh, yes, it'll be flying in November.
It's great.
Yeah.
Bond first got interested in airships when he saw the Goodyear Blimp covering the America's Cup race, which his yacht was winning for Australia. But there's nothing sentimental in his approach to blimps. Bond is simply used to winning.
Well, it had all the ingredients. It was a total risk. We accepted that as being a risk at the time. But it has the potential to lead the world. And there are very few high technology products where you can be the #1 in the world.
Bond is dedicated to making a profit from this risky venture, something no British company has tried to do since the 20s. But can there really be a market for the airship in the modern world? And is the market big enough for two? Akron, Ohio, home of the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company. Last year, Goodyear sales totaled almost $10 billion. Goodyear Aerospace, a wholly owned subsidiary, is its defense arm. Goodyear Aerospace makes everything from flight simulators to torpedo parts. Goodyear has built more airships than anyone, over 300, most of them for the U.S. Navy. Goodyear launched its first blimp during World War I and was still supplying the Navy until 1963. For nearly half a century, Goodyear blimps were the eyes of the fleet, escorting surface ships and providing airborne early warning of attack. This Goliath measured longer than a football field and held over 1.5 million cubic feet of helium. The blimps eventually lost their surveillance job to advanced radars and satellites. But now the U.S. Coast Guard and even the Navy are interested in using blimps again. Both would be wealthy customers. Potentially, it's a gold mine on Goodyear's doorstep. Goodyear has a problem, though. Since the 60s, their airship fleet's been scaled down to only 4 blimps, all used for public relations. Fred Nebeker is in charge of Goodyear's effort to win the Navy bid. An ex-fighter test pilot, Nebeker is proud to demonstrate their new GZ-22. This is the shell that will become Goodyear's 5th public relations blimp when it's finally built.
This airship can be flown, of course, with only one pilot, but as you can see, we have two control systems. The control system is very unique to the airship and perhaps is very unique to the aviation industry in that this is a fly-by-wire system. In other words, the primary means of controlling the airship will be through electrical hookups from this wheel and control column to the elevators and to the rudders.
But despite the sales talk about the Blimps' unique technology, it's no bigger than the other 4 Goodyear ships. It won't be flying for another year, and most significantly, it's been designed for PR and not the military missions the Navy has in mind. Nevertheless, Fred Nebeker is confident Goodyear can easily gear up to meet any new challenge.
We're able to maintain a very steady business base. We have a variety of engineering and technology capabilities. And these are, of course, disciplines that we need if the airship program really gets warmed up again. And we're prepared to meet that. Presently, we have 50 to 80 engineers working on airship activities right now. That is the new Goodyear Tar and Rubber airship. And those people will be in a good position to phase right into the Navy program again if it starts.
As Goodyear turned to products more profitable than airships, Roger Monk, a young British Marine engineer, was dreaming of their commercial rebirth. By the late 1970s, with $20,000 he had borrowed, Monk had set up shop in Cardington, England. After a rocky start, things went from bad to worse, reaching a climax in late 1979. By now, Monk had a huge debt, creditors pressing, gloomy weather reports, and a test pilot he considered far too cautious. For the maiden flight, it's now or never.
Can you know, it's going out in any case, whatever Jibber. I'll take responsibility for the bloody thing. Christ.
It's gonna be all right, you know?
Well, look, Giovanni, little honestly, what a wet blanket. Get it out there, up to the... Let's move it, otherwise we'll miss the next bloody lull. Let's take it up to the door and stop there, and then wait until we get a consistent lull.
Yeah.
Okay?
Slack the line, slack the lines. Hands off.
Cranfield Charlie Echo is 8500 airship on a test flight, approximate duration 20 minutes, maintaining within
At
3
long
miles
last,
of
Monk's company had taken off,
field.
but the euphoria was soon to fade. Harsh figures belied any surface gloss. In the years that followed, losses grew worse as production costs rose and income lagged. As management colleagues came and went, debts mounted until last year, when owing $14 million, bankruptcy was again staring Roger Monk in the face.
We ran out of money, basically. The production program went ahead on time, bang on target. And the problem is the sales didn't, but the taps were told to be kept wide open on the production thing. And of course, as the production went through on time, so the cash flow going out of the company went out on time, but the money coming in didn't.
Their first airship sale was to Japan Airlines for promotional work, but further sales hadn't matured. But when Fujifilm leased an airship for the Olympic Games, it brought valuable publicity, and in Goodyear's home territory. This was the position when Alan Bond bailed them out. $14 million in the red, all their shares withdrawn from the market. In their London offices, Bond installed his trusted henchman and fellow Australian, Alan Birchmore.
Morning.
He has an impressive record of breathing life back into companies thought by others to be on their last legs.
Nice weekend.
Indeed, a bit damp.
It's 8:30 on Monday morning, a year ago March.
Well, we had a good week last week. Okay, let's start with sales. Everybody has an agenda. The resort sale. Attached to the agenda, you've got the letter of intent from Resorts, which is not.
Birchmore's strategy is based on sales and leasing. He's drafted a master plan for recovery, and his short-term priority is cash flow. He needs immediate income from airships. They must pay their way, even to the Paris Air Show just 2 months from now.
Yes, I know that. At one time I heard somebody in marketing say that both airships being
I think it's possible, but unlikely. I think 500 will be working.
I don't see how it could, really, Rog. I really don't see how it could. We're talking about May, aren't we?
I just thought it would rather knock Goodyear. But obviously a lot of extra expense, I suppose.
Well,
It's a good idea. We'll ask the Laboratory organisers through NERSI.
well, we wouldn't be prepared to go to the expense unless there was a decent revenue reason to be there. But if there is a decent revenue reason to be there, why not?
While we're pursuing all these long leases, can we confirm that short leases, days or up to a week, are not on nowadays? Because we have so many approaches for
No, I
short
wouldn't say that at all, LG. I think there's every reason to encourage short-term leases, but I mean the problem is that it's going to cost them £6,000 or £8,000 to get the banners. They're going to have to pay us to put them up. They're going to have to pay us to put them down.
Goodyear doesn't need anybody to pay them to put their blimps up. That's not the business they're in. Unlike airship industries, they don't have a cash flow problem. And their promotional fleet need advertise nothing but Goodyear itself. It's the longer-term non-advertising role for the airship that Goodyear sees as its own by historical right. And that's where the big money lies.
The Coast Guard is seriously considering using blimps to patrol the ocean, looking for drug smugglers, illegal aliens, and to help in search and rescue missions. In one of its first tests,
4 years ago, Goodyear loaned one of its blimps to the U.S. Coast Guard for trials. The experiment seemed to go well, and hopes ran high on both sides.
Goodyear estimates the blimp can fly 8 hours a day for a week on the same amount of fuel a large jet uses to taxi from the gate to the runway. Coast Guard officials say they hope to have their own blimp by 1983. Ike Siemens, NBC News, Miami.
So whatever happened to those optimistic forecasts? What went wrong?
That particular trial, the payload capability of the airship was limited, and the amount of equipment that we needed was not able to be carried. However, we did do some surveillance, looks at surveillance, and found the airship to be quite adequate for that. However, not economically so, because of the size of the airship at that time and the amount of payload that we wanted to be able to carry. So basically the trials were terminated at that point because of the state of the airship technology.
Now fledgling airship industries, with their vectored thrust propellers and greater lifting capacity, want to step in where Goodyear left off. And the Coast Guard wants to do another airship trial, this time fully operational. It could be the breakthrough from small-time advertising to the big league.
Well, I would say that the single most important thing is the US Coast Guard contract. An endorsement by the US Coast Guard would be a tremendous endorsement. They're probably the biggest and the most professional Coast Guard organisation in the world, and therefore an endorsement from them would be very, very important to this company. The actual living scheme that we're proposing for the envelope.
Roger Monk's design team will have only 8 weeks to plan every detail of the Coast Guard airship.
Have they actually approved it as such?
We're sticking on
Every pot of paint, every rivet, every rope will have to be evaluated by an American auditor before the Coast Guard will approve the airship for the 6-month trial.
Yeah. In fact, we've gone away from Coast Guard schemes. I think they have this all in red, don't they, or something?
Yes, we've tended to reduce the painting as much as possible to save us some weight. So we've just got a red flash.
And into the gondola, Monk still has to fit a complexity of operational equipment.
Then there's the chemical toilet, which is going front starboard. The machine gun mount will be mounted on the door.
Okay.
We've got some photographs of that, or a mock-up of it, I should say. Slingsby's are working on that at the moment.
I mean, the ship you saw yesterday is basically the same ship.
John Wood, co-founder of the company and now its top salesman in America, is out to impress the Coast Guard's Captain Wallace. Wallace's team will test the airship operationally, but airship industry still has to win the deal.
Basic vehicle approved to a CAA standard. That's all I care. Then all the modifications that we put on, like the boat you saw yesterday,
the winches, the radar, none of those are approved to a civil standard.
Now, I didn't see anything that looked like
Wood is taking Wallace to see how the special equipment will fit in. The Coast Guard's main task for the airship will be tracking down drug smugglers in the Caribbean.
I mean, we don't want to shoot at anybody. All we want to do is scare them.
But
Six rounds is more than enough.
Listen, unless the Coast Guard's changed a great deal, you want to take the gun on board and go out and fire it in the ocean and have lots.
That's part of the test. I'm coming on board.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm probably the only one in the Coast Guard who's fired at him.
But Wallace doubts if airship can deliver what they've promised on paper.
Machine guns fits just this side of the doorway, and the searchlight is on the opposite side.
Take a look. We're going down. Yeah, take a look there.
The gunner will have a safety strap. So he'll be able to stand on here and lean right out, and the pintle mounting is articulated so that it swings out and gives the gunner a fairly...
What happens to the door when that happens?
The door itself is taken off.
Okay, take the door off.
Rather like you do on a helicopter.
The Skyship 600 can carry a greater payload than the Goodyear blimp, but it'll still be a tight fit.
If we want to go out and shoot the gun, we won't take the boat.
That's right.
Right, yes.
Yes,
you can do turn on the searchlight, we won't take the gun. That's right.
But suddenly it's a one-horse race. Amazingly, Goodyear has pulled out of the contest for the Coast Guard deal. Why?
The reason that we, Goodyear Aerospace, didn't bid on that request for proposal was well thought out, and we very respectfully declined to bid. The basic reason that we didn't bid was that, A, we didn't really feel that the proposal request would provide, in the long pull, the answers that the Coast Guard was looking for. And we would have had to design some very major modifications into our existing airship fleet. And even when that was all done, that still would not be the airship that they might ultimately want to use.
So no Goodyear blimp for the Coast Guard this time. Airship Industries is convinced the real reason Goodyear pulled out is because they have no airship ready. At the Coast Guard's Washington headquarters, haggling over Airship Industries' price continued into the summer. For Airship Industries, the trial alone is worth over $4 million. Goodyear has to put a brave face on it.
If Airship Industries does win this proposal and they get going, we want that to be a very successful program, because whether it's their airship or our airships, airships have to be successful to try and help the future of airships. Now, if they are successful, if they are able, I think it's a long shot, to define a requirement within the Coast Guard and define enough of a requirement to get funding, enough funding so that they can have a viable program, if that long shot should happen, we have nothing to lose, because it will be a different airship in the real case, and then we'll be in a position to move in at that time and provide the Coast Guard with precisely the airship they need.
Whatever the airship's future with the Coast Guard, when the U.S. Navy turns its attention back to the blimp, even Goodyear can't afford to be complacent. The Navy is interested in cheap radar-carrying blimps to support its guided missile fleets. This time, the prize could be worth $3 to $5 billion.
The basic concept is to provide airborne early warning for the fleet, because you basically want this eye in the sky for up 4, 5, 6 days at a time without having to refuel. And the other thing is that as the targets are getting faster and faster and smaller, you need a bigger and bigger radar and able to be able to antenna to be able to discriminate those targets against the background. So you're looking at something in the order of 100-foot antennas. There's no other flying machine that can take that sort of antenna. You have to have a flying machine because you need to get the thing up in the air so you can look down over the horizon.
To give them an American power base, Airship Industries has teamed up with electronics giant Westinghouse to provide the Navy blimps radar. And Goodyear has responded by allying themselves with two avionics firms, Sperry and Litton. A third consortium led by Boeing has also submitted a proposal to the Navy. But in this new race, the tiny British contender claimed an early advantage.
Now the Navy has taken possession of a new British-made airship leased for a summer of testing at a cost of less than $500,000. In a steady rain that grounded less exotic aircraft, the blimp arrived at a Navy test center near Philadelphia.
Airship Industries had taken the contest to Goodyear's home turf with this demonstration of their new generation high-technology blimp.
More cheaply than airplanes. And where, you may ask, is Goodyear, the only American blimp maker? Well, it seems they're still catching up with British airship technology. But if the Navy and Coast Guard decide to buy airships, you can be sure there'll be a stiff transatlantic competition.
I just wondered if we could have a little update as to where we stand on this Navy airship proposal. We got the
Goodyear is
proposal in.
finally starting to take the competition seriously. They wonder aloud if Goodyear could be eliminated early on in a down select, a narrowing of the field.
Our assessment that went in before the bid is still accurate, that there's really three prime contenders.
Three hot ones, yeah.
Three hot
Westinghouse and Boeing.
Westinghouse and Boeing and us.
There's no problem. We're going to get a study. But the down select is going to be immediately after that study.
Yeah.
And it may go down to one. If we're not one, if we don't have a strategy, which of course we do, for being number one, right at the beginning, 6 months later, we may be down selected. And of course, that's exactly the issue.
That strategy includes some hard lobbying in Washington.
Do we know who all the congressmen are that are supporting the program? Can we identify the committees and the staffers that are working this? And we got to work that over pretty heavily. That's part of your plan, right?
Well, one of the major things we've got to do is develop a constituency within the Congress, both in the Senate and the House, to make sure that money's protected and it stays in there. The Navy's doing their thing.
Okay.
But that then goes to Congress, and with all the other pressures, those guys can cut it how they want.
Obviously, we want to work hand in hand with the Navy on promoting it within the Congress.
But the security of the 87 budget is probably contingent upon the success of the study programs.
The Paris Air Show, and Goodyear is riding high. Airship Industries has had a setback. One of its blimps crashed in a Kansas cornfield. They're hoping to bolster their public image here. But the crash apart, the news at Paris is good. Both companies have something to celebrate. At the aviation world's biggest annual gathering, Roger Monk and his Westinghouse partners learned the U.S. Navy has awarded feasibility studies to all three competing groups, themselves, Goodyear, and Boeing. The Navy has given each team over $500,000 to complete a 6-month preliminary study. For now, all three have made it over the first hurdle in the race for the multi-billion-dollar market.
Coffee?
Cause for celebration.
Thank you very much. Good. The point is the scale of the projects that we're taking on is massive, and the risks are very high. And as a matter of course, we've been talking about the US Coast Guard project. We're doing that in a time scale and with a manpower allocation that's a fraction of which any other company would try and do it in the aerospace business.
For all its hard work, Airship's hopes are dashed when the Coast Guard announces it's terminating its airship program. The Coast Guard says it will take a wait-and-see attitude pending the outcome of the much larger Navy bid.
And both the Coast Guard and the Customs. It just
6 months later, on the eve of the Navy's announcement, Goodyear's decision not to bid on the Coast Guard contract has clearly paid off.
Yeah, because it's a different mission.
But part of the advantage is that if somebody, be it Goodyear or whoever, is in the airship business, building airships for the Navy, then there's a base you can spin off an airship for the Coast Guard, and you're willing to make the investment to do it.
It's March, just 2 weeks before the Navy is scheduled to announce its decision. Paris gave Goodyear and Airship Industries a chance to show off to the public. But the Navy League's annual Sea and Air Exposition is their last chance to lobby the Navy and Pentagon brass.
This is the only one time a year get-together between the Navy and other DoD people and industry. So it's convenient to have an opportunity to display the airship model and to talk to people in the Navy with a high level of interest on the Naval Airship Program. So it wasn't planned that way, but it's, good opportunity.
It's also a good opportunity to check out the competition. One of Goodyear's most interested visitors is none other than Joe Nastasi, a project manager for Westinghouse. He's come over to compare Goodyear's design with that of his partner, Airship Industries.
The flight deck and the mission control section, and then the last 80 feet there is the hotel accommodations, the mess.
But Nastasi isn't impressed.
Goodyear is flying a number of advertising airships right now. These designs that they're using, approximately 30-year-old designs, they're flying them, and they're actually an obsolete airship.
Westinghouse doesn't have a model at the show. Nastasi loaned it to the captain in charge of the Navy's program.
That's where we stand. I'm sorry I didn't get to see your version.
Field guys.
Oh, yeah? I'll have to get to the Pentagon tomorrow and take a peek.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Goodyear as a company, in the interim, has done nothing to keep up with modern materials and modern technology for airships. On the other hand, Airship Industries has been building what I have called the modern airship for the last 8 to 10 years. They are flying the world's most modern airship today. And because of that, and because of our base with TCOM, as you know, builds aerostats for us, we are right at the edge of what you'd call modern technology for airships.
We will have zero ballast in the
While Goodyear and Westinghouse are busy talking to each other, it's Boeing, the dark horse, who's garnering attention at the show. Instead of a blimp, a simple airbag, Boeing's design includes a frame that would keep it from collapsing in an emergency.
We'll use a honeycomb type structure, and you know, the spars, still built out of this same composite material that we use for the frameworks here.
Boeing Systems Manager David Lowell.
But it's a new ball game. You know, we're used to thinking heavier than air vehicles. We believe in structure. We could be well accused, in fact we are, of over-designing our airplanes. But it's a very comforting thought to know that you are a little bit over-designed when you get into turbulence or unusual flight situations to have that structural integrity there.
Are we impressed with the competition? Oh, absolutely. When you have companies like Westinghouse and Boeing participating in the same program that you are, that's good competition. That's healthy for the program. It shows you know, significant interest on major firms who are fully capable of doing this kind of a program, as well as Goodyear is. And when you have people in the radars like Hughes, RCA, and Westinghouse, then you're in the area of high technology, and these companies do a good job.
Of course, the others wouldn't be competing at all if Airship Industries hadn't decided to go after a piece of Goodyear's once unchallenged turf. Even Goodyear's Denny Neiman agrees. Now, it's a whole new ballgame.
We're happy that we're all in it at this point in time, but it is a competition, and Goodyear is out to win the competition. So we're going to be doing the best job we can to meet the Navy requirements for the most cost-effective solution to the requirement, and hope that we win the competition.
This program is a co-production of WGBH Boston and the BBC, which are solely responsible for its content. Funding for Enterprise Specials is provided by the Charles H. Kelstadt Foundation and by this station and other public television stations.